This weekend, thousands of travelers walked into airports expecting no frills flights and said found nothing. No planes, no agents, just a yellow logo and a message. Operations have ceased. Spirit Airlines, one of the largest ultra-low cost carriers in the US, abruptly shut down after 30 years, citing a cash crunch that it could no longer outrun. Around 17,000 jobs are disappearing, and tens of thousands of passengers are left scrambling for ways to get home as rival airlines rushed in with so-called rescue shares. What happened when the airline that made flying cheaper for millions suddenly vanishes? Citizen, keep this question in your mind. When a carrier built on rock bottom fares disappears overnight, what does that mean? Not just for the people whose flights were cancelled, but people stand at the gate. And for what we all pay and how this industry works in the year. Let's start with what actually happened. Early Saturday morning, Spirit Airlines announced that it was ceasing operations immediately and initiating an orderly shutdown for running out of cash. All flights were cancelled, customer service was taken offline, and the airline told customers not to go to the airport. About 17,000 jobs, including pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, and corporate staff, were affected. Some employees were mid-trip and had to fly home on other carriers to find their own way back after their work vanished from the system. About 17,000 for passengers, the experience was chaotic. People showed up for vacation, funerals, business trips, and simply found closed counters and overwhelmed airport staff. Many discouraged shutdown not from Spirit directly through news alerts and social media. Spirit closure followed two bankruptcies in as many years, failed restructuring, and a last-minute government-backed rescue proposal that fell apart. Executive points to soaring fuel costs, driven in part by the Iran war, as a decisive factor for many airlines already operating on razor-thin margins. Rescue fares and a scrambled help. Within hours, the other airlines moved in. Carriers like Frontier, Southwest, JetBlue, United, American, and Delta all announced special rescue fares for standard Spirit customers on overlapping routes. Frontier offered discounted rescue fares and even a $199 Go Wild Summer Pass for affected travelers. JetBlue capped some one-way fares at $99 for Spirit passengers who could show a valid itinerary. Southwest charging fat rescue fares at counter $200 for flights under 500 miles, 300, 500 to 1000, and 400 for anything longer. And United offered capped fees, $199 one way on many routes, $299 on longer flights, accessible with a security confirmation number. These offers were partly altruistic, partly opportunistic. On one hand, they helped people get home who might otherwise be forced to pay last minute walk-up prices. On the other, their chance for rivals to win over customers and fill seats without having a discount heavy on the broad market. A rescue pass an act of kindness or a masterclass in opportunism. Which raises a second question. When competitors switch in with special deals after collapse like this, are they primarily rescuing secondary stranded travelers? They're carefully seeding long-term loyalty at the moment when people are most likely to switch plans. But it wasn't just another airline. It was one of the most aggressive ultra-low cost carriers. Kind offered rock bottom base fares and then charged for almost everything else. Bags, seat selection, snacks, and even printing a boarding pass. Whether you loved or hated the model, it had a very real effect on the market. Carrier like Spirit does too. Gives truly budget-conscious travelers a way to fly who otherwise might be priced out and exerts downward pressure on competitors' fares on the routes that it serves. because those competitors have a match, at least stay within a plausible range. With Spirit gone, analysts and consumer advocates warned on routes where Spirit was the main low cost challenger, average fares could creep up as remaining airlines reclaim pricing power. Ancillary fees. But bags, seat selection, and changes might also become less competitive as there less pressure from carrier that's normalize extreme abundance. In other words, even if you never flew Spirit, you may have indirectly benefited from its presence on some routes, when everyone else kept honest on price. Its actions could show up as slightly higher fares over time, especially in leisure-heavy markets. Pilot and mechanic shortage twist. The here's the surprising part. While there was a crisis for Spirit's employees on the short term, industry experts say the timing may soften the blow, at least for some roles. The aviation sector is grappling with acute shortages of pilots, as retirement and training bottlenecks outpace new retirement entrants. Aircraft mechanics and technicians. North America already roughly short around 1,700 workers, and predictions for 30,000% gap within 2 years. Consulting firms like Oliver Wyman estimate mechanical shortfall could climb by more than 40,000 by 2028 in their baseline scenario. And the pain will be felt across airlines and maintenance providers. In that context, major carriers and regional airlines are already rolling out the red carpet with higher wages, signing bonus, and relocation offers to attract experienced mechanics and pilots. Experienced trained staff, especially pilots, technicians, and dispatchers, are likely to be in high demand, potentially finding new roles faster than workers in many other collapsed industries. Can a collapse actually relieve a bottleneck? Which leads us to the third question. Is it possible that for an industry facing a dangerous shortage of skilled people, failure of one airline partially relieve pressure, even if it hurts the very workers and communities most directly involved? The grim trade-off. Few jobs for one company, with more breathing room in a system that was already strained. Spirit Collapse is a case study of how fragile low cost model can be when multiple shocks hit at once. Key pressures included fuel costs. Jet fuel prices surged more than 7% after the Iran war intensified, hammering airlines whose margins lie on packing planes and charging extra than premium fares. Debt and restructuring. Spirit has already gone through two bankruptcies and restructuring attempts in 2 years, leaving it with limited room to absorb new shocks. And failure. Proposed $500 million government-backed rescue for up to 90% equity stake fell apart, leaving the airline out of moves, as one report put it. Ultra low-cost carriers can thrive when fuel is cheap or hedged effectively, demand is high and relatively predictable, and competition is fragmented. But they can really struggle when input costs suddenly spike, they're heavily leveraged, and they face large, well-capitalized rivals who can temporarily match low fees to squeeze them. In that sense, Spirit Story is a reminder of that cheap isn't the same as resilient. Now, come back to the three questions we've been threading throughout the story. Number one, what happens when an airline that made flying cheaper for millions vanishes? In the short term, you get stranded travelers and heartbreaking job losses. Over time, you may see less price competition in certain routes and subtle rise in what cheap airfare means in the US market. Number two, are rescue cars kindness or opportunities? Or both. Frontier, Purpose, United, and others are genuinely helping people get home, while also seizing a rare chance to win new customers and fill in seats in a way that looks generous and smart at the same time. And three, can a collapse really relieve a bottleneck? Spirit disappearance dumped thousands of skilled pilots and mechanics into a market desperately needs them. The broader system It may ease shortages for individuals and their families that feel painful, uncertain transition. So, the next time you see a rock from there or a board brightly painted budget flight, you might think of the delicate math behind the ticket, the fuel prices, staffing, and competitive pressures that make it possible. In reality, that sometimes one sharp shock, all that take bring huge model down. Thank you for listening to Business Insights Daily. I'm your host Shank, and we'll see you next time.